Hi, everybody. This is Ryan Johnson's 39th LD Happy Hour. Tonight, we're going to have teacher and parent Natalie Hollifield on to explain. Natalie is at the crossroads of multiple issues in this country right now. She's going to explain what it's like to be her. And with that, I will turn this over to Natalie.
Hi, everybody. So I don't know, for me, it's not very interesting. I'm a middle school teacher. I'm a new middle school teacher, actually. So yes, last year was my first year, and way to launch into teaching with a pandemic, right? Like, I don't know. It's been a unique experience. And my family just gets home because dinner was ruined, so they went to go get food. The spring was crazy, and then it ended, and I think every person, parents, teachers, children, everybody was like, we're done. Thank goodness for summer. And then summer hit, and we're just kind of like, okay, what's next year? What's next year? What's next year? Well, here we are. We are online teaching, online learning. And as a parent, it has its struggles. I've got 2 kids in school myself. My oldest is a senior this year, so I don't really worry too much about her. She's capable. My middle is in 7th grade with me. I'm a 7th grade middle school science teacher. But because she's my child, I opted not to teach her. So the one period worth of science that another teacher has, I said, sorry, kid, you're not gonna be in my class. So I fully understand the parental side of the struggle, right? Like, I'm a full-time working parent. My husband works full-time. We've also got a 2-year-old. And then I'm tasked with remote teaching from home with my own children and all of the crazy that goes with all of that. Teaching from the teaching end, I don't think that this could be any more of a difficult time teaching, especially for our teachers that have been doing this for a really long time, right? So just like anything else in life, you get into a routine and you get really good at that routine, and you are like a professional at what you do. And then the world goes crack, sorry, 180, turn around, and we're gonna say, you are no longer a professional, you're a newbie. And so I kind of feel like, well, maybe I'm in an advantage because I am a newbie, and so everything is new to me in teaching. And so I'm a little more flexible when it comes to all of these new platforms that we're doing, right? I haven't been so trained to the process of 7th grade science, or if I was an ELA teacher or a kindergarten teacher. You know, I don't have my absolute set routine because my coworkers really rely heavily on, well, every year this unit usually takes us about this long. And I'm like, hey guys, so let's remember, this year is so different than before, and we're teaching things in so many new and different ways. We're not, in science at least, we don't have a textbook. We're using an online platform. It's great. It's so different than anything that we've ever done before. I really hope that the kids like it, and I really hope that the parents see the value in this specific program and how we're doing it. I know a lot of people struggled with it last spring, but sorry, this smoke outside is getting to me bad, and so my throat is like crazy today. So I don't know. I mean, online teaching, online learning, I think it's all crazy. It's all a little nutty, but it's what you make of it. And every teacher that I know so far has been trying to do their absolute best to make sure that the content is engaging, as fun as sitting at a computer for like 6 hours a day can be. You know, we built in break times, and kind of we're practicing this Zoom thing and making breakout sessions and trying to get the kids engaged. Honestly, 2 weeks into school, the hardest thing so far has been to get the kids comfortable. For some reason, there are so many kids that are afraid to turn their camera on. And I know that there are kids that have background situations, that home is crazy, and, you know, they might not want anybody to see the stuff behind them. But even outside of that, you know, those are probably a handful of kids. There are so many kids that they just don't want to turn their camera on. And I can't do any kind of coaxing every day. My class pops up every period, and I'm like, hey guys, it's nice to see you. I see 3 of your faces. Where are the other 20 of you? And I might have another couple kids that turn their video on, but that's it. Like, I can tell you what maybe 4 or 5 kids out of my 6 periods, each class, what they kind of look like. Other than that, I have no idea. If I ran into these kids downtown, you know, I live in town where I teach, so I'm going to run into these children. They're going to recognize me because my video is on. I'm not going to know who they are. They're going to wave at me. And I had this conversation with them yesterday, actually. And I said, isn't it going to be really awkward when I'm standing in Moe's and you're with your group of friends and you guys are all like, oh, there's Miss Holyfield, and I see a bunch of kids pointing at me, but I don't recognize any of them? That's going to be a little weird. So I don't know. Teaching in a pandemic is different. There's, what does going back in the classroom look like? I don't know. My class is nowhere near big enough, the classroom size, to hold 30 kids. There's no way, you know. Social distancing definitely needs to be an ongoing kind of thing. We have a teacher that, her and the janitor, one of the janitors, actually set up her room for social distance, and she was able to fit 7 desks in her classroom. 7. That's it. Like, how do we return to school when a small, and mind you, her room is smaller, especially smaller than mine. I'm in a science lab, but she's in a kind of small room. But if you gave the average classroom, like, you might be able to put in 2, maybe 3 more desks. So even still 10, right? And we can't get anybody, we can't pass a bond to even build 1 more school. How are we going to get kids in class in a safe way where we're not crammed on top of each other? Honestly, when I walked into my classroom last year and I was trying to arrange my lab desks, right? So I have a 2 top, kids sit next to each other, and I have enough seats for 30. I don't have the room in my classroom to safely move around as a science class and to have 30 kids at these type of desks in my classroom. It was crazy trying to, the way that I had to arrange things, there was no other arrangement that was possible so that we could move. I don't know. I mean, there's so much. I would love some feedback from people. I don't know what else to talk about. Teaching, parent, student, it's all of it. The only thing that I can keep saying and that I remind myself is we are all in this together and we are all struggling. And so I try to remind myself, parents aren't necessarily sending emails because they're trying to nag. And then I want to say, parents, remember that teachers are also struggling because we have all of the kids to teach, all of the content that we have to do so differently, right? On a regular year, everything's already planned. Everything has already been in place for at least the last year, probably 5. This is completely new. So what would normally take an hour or 2 to get ready for is taking 10, 15, 20 hours sometimes. It's taking an extreme amount of time to get ready to teach every week. It's kind of crazy. So the buzzword kind of that I keep hearing in the teacher community is grace. Just make sure that everybody is given a little bit of grace in the situation because it's new for everyone.
I'll start. First off, as the son of a teacher, thank you for not teaching your own children. You gave them a break that they have no idea how big of a favor you've done them. I know of one private school, I will not mention the name of it, that is going to class 5 days a week full time. And for one, they don't have very many students.
Right.
And for two, I think they used to have a lot more students.
Yes.
They have under 300 students. And I talked to he's the IT guy, he's the everything guy. Talked to him before they opened, and I went there on Thursday again to deliver to see how it, and talk to him about how it was going. The way they got the amount of students in their school was they bought a ton of shipping containers. And they emptied out their school and stored everything in those shipping containers. And they barely make the social distancing math, but they do. And they've been in school since the 1st. And he said, so far, the biggest problem we have is kids not wanting to wear masks.
Yeah.
And I said, you know, when we were on the reopen the school committee, we knew that was going to be a problem. We knew that was going to be a huge problem. And I said, that was one of the things that kept us from reopening. He says he doesn't expect it to last very long. He thinks there will be breakouts and they're going to have to close. And he asked me about getting a CDL because he's tired of working for a school. They're public schools in no way can social distance. I did a post on this 2 or 3 months ago on my campaign page. Very early on, I mean, I think it might have been maybe even in June when I went to another school, asked how they were setting up for it. He showed me. It was the day the OSPI documentation came out. And that class normally had 26 kids in it. To social distance it properly, he got it down to 15 desks, of which 2 might have had to have gone away due to fire codes.
Right.
So absolute best case scenario, just by the most basic math, public schools will be able to have a maximum of 50% of the kids in it at one time.
Mm-hmm.
And that's not going to change. And every day in a school is a potential super spreader event, which is what nobody wants to admit. And we've seen how it's worked at schools across the country, especially colleges. It's not working out too well.
Nope.
And we're just thinking about the schooling part. We're not thinking about the kids bringing it home to their parents or their grandparents or the high-risk teachers or the bus drivers. It's a war of attrition. Everybody's going to lose. And we'll be right back to where we are now. So we might as well just start it this way, save everybody a bunch of money on healthcare bills, because if you get this and you get it bad, the healthcare alone will change your life. That's if you live and come out of it normal, which a lot of people know. So I think we're doing the right thing by online school. I think anybody enjoys it. It's horrible for parents who can't stay home. But I don't see any other alternative.
No, I'm with you. And
Anybody else have any questions?
I struggle with all of that because I'm a thinker, right? And so I have this ability to just view it from all points of view, but I don't have a solution for any of it, because any solution that I have makes it that somebody isn't in a benefiting end, which in reality, nobody benefits from any of the choices that we have. You know, my heart breaks for the kids who are at home struggling because their home situation right now is terrible. It is horrible for the kids who are at home and struggling because their parents have to work and they don't have the internal drive to get on and do the computer, or because they've never been taught to have the internal drive. I think that this, as a society, this is a huge learning point and shifting point for us, where we need to realize that we have to teach our kids a lot of things. And a lot of that goes back to TV and video games aren't a babysitter. You know, we need to teach our kids to have rules and restrictions and guidelines, and there needs to be structure. And so many of our kids, just in America, period, don't have structure, because we have been forced to be in this either a single parent household kind of thing, or a majority of people are in a dual income household. We're one of those. You know, I'm lucky enough that I'm a teacher and I can be home to support my 11-year-old. Thank you for acknowledging, Ryan. I'm really hard on my own kids. I always have been. But I think that that's a cultural thing. Something that I didn't realize, you know, a lot of this, I guess I'm going to start to pull over into the cultural side a little bit. As I have been exposed to, or exposed myself to, digging deep into a lot of this race relations in things that I've been investigating and being a part of, there's a lot about my own childhood and upbringing that I didn't ever realize was really different than, quote unquote, like white America. And so I do things a little different than even a lot of my friends that grew up in other places. It's just different. So really, this is a chance for America and our teaching system and our homes to mold or to meld into something different than what we are right now. And honestly, to be 100% honest, our education system isn't working to the best of its ability. It wasn't. It's throwing 30, 35 kids in a classroom and saying, here, sit at a desk. You get to, once you get to middle school, you get to move between classes every hour. And you get different subjects in each of those classes. Like, that's cool. Have the expert teach the subject that they're an expert in. I love that. I don't love the kids sitting at their desks for 6 to 8 hours a day with 5-minute passing periods, a half-hour lunch. Like, being crammed into a classroom with a bunch of other kids and a talking head. The teacher, me, right? Like, I'm a talking head. I stand up there and I'm like, stop holding your pencil like that. Or, why are you chewing on that? Please don't throw that. Like, I spend more time asking weird questions than I do actually teaching. And I think that we would benefit from a whole revamp right now, because we can, of our education system. If we could send our kids, half the kids, to school for half a day, it would cut down on the distractions in the classroom, right? I wouldn't have 30 kids to sit and have to eye and say, are you passing notes, or are you paying attention, or how come whatever, you don't pick your nose, here's a tissue, now go wash your hands. It's the middle school 7th grade is almost like kindergarten. It's pretty gross sometimes. So I don't know, I see this as a huge opportunity in time for us to reimagine our education system. And I think that we're failing our youth by sending them to school for so long every day, where a majority of their time, they're sitting there being bored and hating being in school. It breaks my heart. Like, I'm an education nerd. Just, I am. Like, and not because I'm a teacher. I became a teacher so that I could share my nerdiness with the kids, right? So this is only my 2nd year teaching. Like, I've done other things. So it hurts me to say that we shouldn't put them in a setting where they should be paying attention and learning for an extended period of time. But I think that there's more value in a lot of life skills that kids are missing out on too. And they have the ability to learn some of this information, a lot of this information, in a shorter period of time. So reimagine the education system.
Natalie, how, and I'm with you, I think this will change education forever. I know it will change college forever. How do you think it should look? Let's do middle school, let's do kindergarten to middle school, because I think, I would guess the high schoolers are probably more well prepared for this than the younger kids. Maybe not.
Nah, not really.
How do you, what changes do you see happening, and what changes would you like to see?
What changes do I see happening? I have no idea, because really, like, the education system is another part of the big bureaucracy, right? And it moves slower than a snail, which I will move forward again. All of these race relation issues I brought to our school district's attention 5 years ago. It's taken 5 years for us to just start to have a, what do they call, a social justice, I think that's what they're calling it, English class for seniors at the high school 5 years later. So it moves painfully slow. I don't know what I see being a change. What I would like to see is our kids sitting on their butts in a classroom for less time. We're a nation that is plagued by obesity, and we have this extreme fascination with throwing people in a place and telling them to sit. Our bodies as animals are not made to do that. We are made to be walking and moving. So I'm a science teacher, but I'm a biologist. I have my undergrad in biology. I had grand plans when I was a kid to be a doctor. My kids laugh at me because they're like, Mom, nobody can read your signature. I'm like, yeah, because I was supposed to be a doctor, guys. Like, I perfected that in 6th grade. It's been the same since then. It's never changing. So, you know, I've got this crazy weird background in all this stuff. And I don't know. I would love to see kids in class, not 8 hours a day, not 7 hours a day. You know, we're there, 6.5 hours a day? They get a half-hour lunch. Just less time sitting doing something. Honestly, if we had half the class size, and this is what I keep saying, is if we had half the class size, the kids could probably be in class half the time. I honestly believe that. If you talk to any parent that does homeschooling, it takes a couple hours a day and their kids get all of the information that we teach in less than half the amount of time. So they're able to go out and play and be kids. Take her outside. Sorry, my middle schooler's sitting here, right here behind me, throwing the ball with the dog.
You always tell me to.
I don't know, less time, smaller classes. Smaller classes are so necessary. We pound this for kindergarten through 3rd grade, but we know the brain biology and the chemistry that happens in 6th, 7th, and 8th grade. Their brains basically are that of a toddler-ish with a little more maturity, and they've got all these connections that are going and growing and doing these things and changing. They don't have the ability to focus for 20 minutes, let alone 52 sitting in my class, right? They have to get up and do things. So where do we go? I don't know. I don't have any solid answers. I have ideas. My idea is smaller classes, less time in them.
Do you think an A and B schedule permanently would be something that would benefit the kids?
I do. But the problem with it is it has to come down from the state, because OSPI has all these hours and days and, you know, whatever all their rules are. And we've got waivers in place and we've got these, whatever, I don't even know. It's bureaucracy. I hate it. I hate all of the crazy rules that are in place for so many different things. I know we need some of them, but at some point we should kind of trust adults. I don't know, but I don't know. I think an A/B schedule would be beneficial.
Anybody
sorry.
else have any other questions?
I did. I was just had the thought for Natalie. Do you think that the OSPI formed the amount of minutes and the amount of days based off of two parents working?
Probably. I don't know. I don't even know how long that's been in place, honestly. And Ryan and I had talked about this. Unfortunately, our education system has become daycare. So now the 2-year-old's here. And do you want to say hi? Say hi.
Hi.
So we've become daycare. And
Hi.
I mean, I remember being in a place where I was finishing up school, right? So some of my backstory, we were military. We've lived in San Diego, Hawaii, all kinds of stuff. I didn't finish my undergrad until I got divorced. I was a single mom of 2 kids, and I was dirt poor, right? But I did it. I finished. And when Deja, so my now 11-year-old, was old enough to be in school, it was like, it felt like this huge relief because, oh God, now I don't have to pay for daycare. So I totally understand it, but it's also a fault in America where we look at it as a daycare system, right? It shouldn't be. Education has lost its value in America because it's a daycare, right? We don't send kids to school to get knowledge. We send kids to school so that they can get watched while I'm at work and gain some knowledge while they're there. Whereas it should be, they go to school to get smart so that they can do intelligent things and make educated choices. Oh, and there's a responsible adult there supervising while I'm at work. So there's kind of this, like, I feel a paradigm shift that needs to take place. We need to revalue education for what it is. We need an educated population in order to continue to thrive.
I would agree with that. However, there's a wonderful internet meme going on around that says we all need to send our kids to college so they can become doctors, lawyers, and educated people so the rest of the country can ignore them.
It's, yes.
I don't know how you get around that. I didn't go to college. If you look at my high school transcripts, I was more than college bound. I just didn't want to go. And I am very well read. I love to learn. Problem is, I love to learn about stuff I'm interested in. I love history. I like metalwork. I like things to do with you do with your hands. And I don't regret not going to college because I don't see a way that college would have helped me with any career that I have either had or am interested in having even today.
Right.
I'm a big fan of trade schools. I'm a big fan of apprenticeships. I wish we had more of the European model where they do apprenticeships basically starting in middle school.
Right.
But they aren't permanent. So if you get into one you don't like or you're not good at, you can switch out of it. I do think that is a better model.
Right.
And I don't see the rest of the world fighting their educated people.
No. So in there, notice I didn't say college because I don't believe everybody is, college is for everybody. I'm going to go back to it. I was determined I was going to be a doctor. I wanted to be a doctor. I wanted to heal people. I wanted to solve big world health problems. Like, that's what I wanted to do when I was a kid, if I didn't become a lawyer because I like to argue. Well, neither one of those happened. So I had to make at least biology happen because I care about our planet. And without our planet, we cease to exist, right? So when we trash it, as we are, humans aren't here anymore. So I wanted to make sure that I at least followed through on something that was important to me. So I majored in biology and I went to school. And trades weren't for me. Some people are really mechanical and they can do all of the things with their hands and all of I don't know, like my mom's a nurse. That's for her. I looked at that. I got accepted to the Everett nursing program, and the lady there was not nice at all. And I was like, see ya. If you want to get smart, intelligent people into your program, you got to kind of like acknowledge that they've taken way more than enough classes to be in your program, and not like downplay the fact that, okay, so she told me I had to retake a microbiology class that was 1 year too old outside of their requirements. And I was like, you've got to be kidding me. I have a bachelor's degree in biology. I just graduated, and you're going to tell me I have to retake a micro class? Microbiology doesn't change. I'm sorry. It's the same. See ya. So no, I don't think that college is for everybody. There are highly skilled and intelligent people that do great things without going to college. But I think that we need to just value education. And education is different for everyone. I am so bluntly honest with my kids. When I say my kids, my students, they all know that their science teacher, and I haven't had a chance to tell my kids this year but their science teacher got a bachelor's degree without buying college books, except for her math books, because she doesn't read.
Nice.
I don't like to read. When I was a kid, I had slight dyslexia, and I learned other ways to learn. And that's okay. We all learn differently. I didn't miss a single class in college unless I was deathly ill, but I also never bought a book because reading doesn't teach me. I'm a hands-on type of learner. I need to be there seeing it, hearing it, and I learn that way. And so I'm really upfront with my students about that, because I want them all to know that we're unique and we're all individual, and everybody learns the way that's best for them. And if that means that you're going to sit there and doodle some notes and listen to me, as long as when I ask a question, you can respond on topic at least, then I know that you're absorbing some of the information. However, if you're doodling and drawing your comic strips and then you go, what? There's a problem, right? Whereas other kids are actually taking notes and others are sitting there chewing on a pencil, and everybody is still getting that information. We all learn differently and we all have different skill sets.
I would agree with that. I went to college. I actually ended up having a career that had absolutely nothing to do with why I went to college. And I've always thought of myself as educated, but not in any way because I went to college. And actually, like Ryan saying he didn't go to college, I think of him as one of the most educated people I know. Mm-hmm. And it's because he continues to learn. He's continuing to read up on things and stay current and, you know, in that knowledge base, and everyone learns differently. And I have a saying there that we're all pieces to the same puzzle. And we all come from different backgrounds and learn in different ways. So yeah, there's no one path for anybody, potentially, but yeah, whether you go to college or trade school or not, that doesn't mean you're not educated. You can certainly be more than educated, regardless. So. Right.
It's how much knowledge in general you continue to seek. And something else I tell my students is that I'm a lifelong learner, and I'm gonna tell you something wrong in class at some point. If you want to correct me, please do. Know that I'm probably gonna Google it just to make sure, but I can't be right all the time. We are all wrong at some point. And if you correct me, it's not gonna hurt my feelings. I want to give you the right information, but we make mistakes or we misremember information or whatever. So lifelong learning, and however that happens for everybody is unique. But I think it comes back to, in America, we need to relook at what learning and education is and what it means for us. What's the goal?
Can I ask a question that's going to come up after the recording is off?
Absolutely.
As somebody with a biology degree, do you believe in wearing masks?
Yes.
Thank you. This will come up after the recording is off. My wife is running the meeting. Craig, if you think I have brains, you ought to meet my wife. I think we're putting too much, and this is beyond the value of public schools, but we are putting too much emphasis on college education, and we have, at least since I was a kid. My wife will be able to accomplish things that people with master's degrees couldn't on their best day. And she can do it without batting an eye. And everywhere wants a college degree for you to get a minimum wage job. And that has to end. That, if we want to talk about something that should change education, that has to end. Because the private sector wants you to have hundreds of thousands of dollars in college debt to pay you 30 grand a year. And those things will never meet.
Well,
they cannot meet.
That was my first job. So I was a single mom with 2 kids, graduated, and I got a job in a medical laboratory for $13.50 an hour.
Yep.
Like, doctors would call me. Doctors were calling and saying, so this is what's wrong with my patient. What test should I order? I don't know. You're the doctor, right? And so, like, I already knew the answer to it, but you're the doctor. You're making hundreds of thousands of dollars a year. You should be the one that should be telling me what tests you want to order, not calling the gal that's making barely above minimum wage who's going to be running the test.
Right.
Like, it was frustrating and sad.
I don't know how we get around this problem, but
I don't know.
it has to end.
Yeah.
Because people are just going to refuse to go to college. What's the point of going to college for 4 or 6 years to, by the time you end up paying off your student loans for 30 years, to making what you wouldn't have made, to making less than you made if you'd have never gone?
Because you love learning so much that you get a job to
not
pay
that much.
Master's
I
degree.
can buy a lot of books for 100 grand.
Because I am definitely going to be that person that I'm going to be taking college classes for the rest of my life, because I value that kind of education. I don't know why, but that's important for me. And I think part of it is cultural. I'm the first person in my family to have a bachelor's degree. I'm the first person in my family to have a master's degree. In any of my family's pretty damn big. I am the first one from my dad's side of the family to move away from home. Like, there's so much that I just can't stop. Like, we were home 2 weekends ago, California. All of my cousins, so my dad's, yes ma'am. Not right now. My dad's side of the family is Hispanic. My grandma literally was a field worker. She picked strawberries and worked for Smuckers. And she's this little tiny 5-foot woman. Actually, she's 4'11". She's this little tiny woman that has fire in her soul, and a thirst for life. Like, she is broken, but will never let you know. We showed up and she was like, "Ay, mija, do you need some water?" And we're like, "No, we're okay, Grandma. We just came from the beach, blah, blah, blah." And
I go to the beach.
not right now.
Right now?
No. But I don't know. It's something about doing it for my family. Like, I need to continue, because history has always said that side of my family isn't worth it. Sorry. that part of me is supposed to be held down. So damn it, I'm going to have a doctorate one day.
Natalie, you told me your one side of your family's longshoremen.
Yes, that side of my family.
They are doing very well.
They are doing well now. My dad,
They found out a way not to be held down.
Right. But that's the thing, is that they have always taught me not to be. And they found the trade route. And they are part of the ILWU.
I'm going to the beach.
Not right now, honey.
Right now.
No. And they do amazing. They do great, right? Like my aunt bought a house a few years ago in Southern California, not cheap, like $750,000 for a tiny little house in California. She does well. My dad does well. But none of them have, if they have a high school diploma, if they have nothing beyond that. And knowledge has always been of value to me. If I didn't have the knowledge that I have today, I wouldn't be where I am today if I was even here. So, you know, things happen for a reason, and I was meant to have a lot of education, I guess.
Any more questions for this part of it from anybody?
Natalie and Daddy.
I just want to say I want to go to the beach too. It's neatest in North County, San Diego.
Yeah.
So when your daughter said that, I'm like, yeah, that's all I can think about lately is I just want to go swim in the ocean, not North Oceans. It's too cold here.
Right? It was so nice to, I mean, we didn't get in the water or anything, but just to go out, and there's a smell with the salt water in the ocean, and there's something specific about it that it was so nice to be there and to just put my feet in the sand for a few minutes.
Yeah, it's great. I miss it. I miss that. I do not miss housing costs for sure.
Oh, no. And the traffic and the brownness and the houses slammed up against each other. I mean, we're close, but nothing like that. And there was a lot that I'd forgotten about. I hadn't been home in close to 10 years. And so going back for just a weekend, I was like, I can't wait to go home to Washington.
The air is cleaner here for sure. I feel it. I can't breathe as well down there. I do miss the ocean. That one's just the biggest, really. And there's no way, you know, I was looking at housing costs recently, and I make pretty good money. I make more than I have in my life. And I do work with people who have master's degrees. I'm one of the only 2 people in the Puget Sound that has my job that does not have a college degree. So, even if I could make as much money now down there, I couldn't even rent an apartment. I could rent a room.
Right.
Like, it's crazy. It's really bad here lately. I mean, last week I was looking at rooms, and I think COVID has made it even worse. But like rooms for rent are $700-800 in Snohomish County for a room in a tiny house, tiny rooms, 10 by 10. I mean, that's just crazy.
Yeah.
That's how any young person gets out of high school and goes to work for any job, let alone try college and pay for even that room. Our wages aren't that high.
No, they don't. You know, my senior she's going to be working almost full time because she's doing Running Start. So, you know, flexibility and all that. And even full-time minimum wage, she's only going to be bringing home a few $100s a month.
Yeah. Yeah. I can't even, I don't know how we let our country get to this point, because for people who are median income and below, there's not a lot of hope.
No.
And Ryan will say this over and over. We can't all be doctors. We can't even all be in big union jobs. We can't even all choose to get a state job where we can have good benefits and pensions, because there's not enough of those jobs for us all to do it.
Well, and in society, you know, we need people to fill all levels of jobs, right? All skill sets and all things. There have to be people that are whatever.
Hi.
And full-time work should be a living wage. It really should. And people who work full-time as janitors should be able to live a comfortable life and not the way it is today. Yeah.
All right, Natalie, you want to move on to part 2?
Okay.
Everybody start drinking.
Take this to them.
Are we still recording? Do you want to continue?
Yeah, keep recording.
Okay.
Take this to them. Okay, Daddy's gonna change you.
Okay, so I don't know. I guess I'll start. So there is a ton of pain in this topic for me. And I'm going to start with an accidental finding that my oldest, so when my oldest daughter was 2 years old, we call it the family trip from hell. So we had just moved to San Diego and my parents had just retired. So I'm a military brat and my parents had retired from Hawaii where we had previously been stationed as well. So we moved to San Diego. My parents retired from Hawaii and moved to Idaho. They bought a house in Coeur d'Alene and retired there. And they wanted to take a summer trip with all the kids. So me and my oldest flew up there and we did a road trip. And we drove back down toward Southern California. They were going to drop us off in San Diego so we could be home and blah, blah, blah. Well, along the way, she had gotten a blister on her foot. And she was about 2, maybe 2.5 at this point, probably closer to 2.5. And we're in the car. My brother is my half brother. He's blonde hair, blue eyes, super tall, super skinny. And we're in the back of this Tahoe chugging along down the road. And she's like, Mommy, my foot hurts. And I was like, oh, what's going on? And I look and she's got a blister and it had popped and she was wanting to peel the skin off. Well, we know you don't generally peel the skin off of a brand new popped blister unless you enjoy some pain, right? You kind of let it heal for a couple days and maybe when that skin is hard, you can pull it off. So I said, no, leave it alone. It needs to protect the good skin underneath. And she kind of looked at me puzzled and then messed with it a little bit. And then she got super excited. Oh, okay, give me this. She got super excited and she goes, oh, you mean I'm going to have good skin like Buddy? Which is my brother. So she thought.
You gotta give Mommy a kiss.
She did. One
Here.
more.
Okay.
She thought and had already figured out by 2.5 that she was going to get white skin. I was mortified. I didn't at all anywhere in there mean to tell her that her skin was not good skin, right? Like I was referencing the skin underneath the blister and it was going to be the good healthy skin, and she didn't take it like that at all. She instantly knew that white skin that she saw that hadn't gained any melanin yet was going to be like her uncle's because his blonde hair, blue eyes, white skin was the good skin. So I'm going to be like Buddy. And I was like, I wanted to die. Like, how do you fix that situation to tell your kid that their skin is not bad? So that was the first time I really realized that, like, okay, this is a thing. Be careful with what you say because you don't want her to not value who she is. Like, we all want our kids to be proud of who they are. And I just wanted her to be the best human that she could be. Fast forward a couple years later, we moved from San Diego and we were moving up here to Washington. So Elijah was almost 4 at that point. And we were driving we didn't have a house yet. We were moving to Oak Harbor. We were going to stay with my parents for a week or 2 until we can get into Navy housing. So we cut across from Sacramento and went through Tri-Cities, something over there. And I had stopped at a Fred Meyer to get gas. We go inside because she's little. She had to go to the bathroom. So I take her in and go to the bathroom, and we're walking out. And she's got this little tiny fro that was going on because she's got curly hair. And we were walking out, and there were two women walking with a little boy that was about her age. And all she wanted to do was say hi to him. He turned around to say hi, and the older woman, I'm assuming it was his grandma, so it must have been his grandma and his mother. The older woman grabs him after she looked at us and says something to the effect of, "We don't talk to those people," and pulled him. And he kept trying to turn around to say hi to my child, who was just waving at him and just wanted to say hi. And she wouldn't even let him say hi. And I was like, where in the F are we moving to? I had never in my life experienced anything like that. I grew up with gang activity, people that hate each other just for the sake of hating each other, but it was never because you're Black or you're Mexican. It was always because you were from the wrong neighborhood, right? There's so much to gang activity that people don't understand, and the majority of it has nothing to do with your skin color. And so that was this huge eye-opening moment for me. And I was like, wow, okay, you are the mother of a Black child. There are some things that you need to learn. I don't know, living in a military community, growing up in one, it's super diverse. All my friends were like, we were all mixed, right? Like I'm Hispanic and white. A couple other friends of mine were Black and Filipino and white, Black and white, like anything. We are the rainbow, and we all still talk to each other randomly to this day, right? And we all look back and we say, those were the best times of our life because we belonged to our little rascal group, even though we didn't fit in with anybody else. And so when we lived in Oak Harbor, it was kind of the same environment up there for us. When we were looking to move, we were being really particular about the area we chose because I value education, and I wanted to make sure that my kids were going to be getting an education in a neighborhood that we could afford, that was good, that wasn't going to present them with some of the violence that I grew up with. When you grow up in a gang-ridden area, there are things like people jumping over fences and getting stabbed on the other side of the plexiglass and having their lung punctured while the blood splatters across it right in front of you in the lunch line. I didn't want my kids to have to grow up with that. So it was a toss-up between here and Mill Creek, kind of Bothell, Mill Creek, Everett. We were looking there. I didn't want my kids in an apartment, so we chose Arlington. If I had to go back and do it again, I probably wouldn't be here today. I chose blindly based on it being a good school district. It's been a really rough ride for my kids. I didn't realize how white Arlington was until Elijah had been in school for maybe a month or two. So in second grade, I went for something and I walked in her class, and I think she was one of like 2 or 3 kids that didn't have blonde hair in her classroom. And I was like, all right, this is different than anything I've ever seen in my life. This is weird. Whatever, we're rolling with it. Like, it's school. She hasn't complained much yet. All through elementary school. Little microaggressions, kids not really, they're exploring. They've never really seen anybody that has hair like hers. So they're sitting in class and they're poking at it and I think that the last straw for her there was when they were putting pencils in her hair because her hair would hold the pencils. As she aged out of elementary school and Deja came into elementary school, the demographics started to change. So there are 6 years difference between the two of them. Deja's class was a lot more diverse. There's a lot more Hispanic kids, a few more Black kids in the classes. Still not enough to really make a big difference, but she isn't the only one. Out of Elijah's class that moved into Howler, I think there were maybe 3 kids that were Black or mixed. Out of Deja's class that moved up, there were at least twice that many. So there are changes. It got rough when we got to middle school for Elijah, so for my oldest. Election year was 8th grade. And it was a learning curve for her as well. So, you know, when you're in a community and it's all you've ever known, right? She is Arlington. Like, she's been here since 2nd grade. She's been in the school district for 10 years. She doesn't know anything different. And so her upbringing is Arlington. It's essentially white, right? Like, she doesn't have any kind of crazy cultural knowledge. We haven't been home to California to see my Hispanic side of the family in forever. She doesn't have any strong ties to her Black family that's from Louisiana. It's me, like, and in Arlington. So she is the same as every other kid that's ever grown up here. She was riding the bus one day and she came home. She rode the bus to school. And she came home from school and she says something about, yeah, you know, blah, 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 and the Mexico City bus stop. And I was like, hold on. What did you just say? And she got this look on her face because Mom's given me the look. And I was like, back up. Tell me about that. She instantly knew that whatever that she just said was wrong. She wasn't sure why. So I provided her a little bit of education. And I said, you will never call that bus stop that again, because all of those kids on that bus with you that were laughing about that bus stop and calling it that name, would they be cool if you were calling their neighborhood White Trashville or whatever it is? Like, no, we're not going to do that. We're not going to peg anybody. Stop. So I think that was the first like real eye-opening moment for her that there was something is different here.
Oh, don't forget what you had to remind her.
What? This is my husband, Ryan.
Hi.
Hello.
You had to remind her
What?
that she was Hispanic herself.
Right. You know, yes, we did have that conversation. I'm like, you do realize that like they're calling this place Mexico City as a dig, but you're Mexican. And she kind of was like, oh, okay, I get it. Never mind. Yeah. You know, so there's a learning curve to this stuff for the kids, right? Once she realized that, she then started coming home and she was like, Mom, they're doing the Hitler salute in the hallways. And I'm like, wait a minute, what? Or, Mom, they're chanting Build the Wall in the cafeteria. And I'm like, who's stopping this? Nobody. I mean, which I'm in a school now, and there was probably an adult that was running over trying to get it stopped, but it was so out of control that like she didn't see it. But on the same hand, why are these kids chanting that? Why are they Hail Hitler in the hallway? Right? Like, that's insane in 8th grade. The last straw for me that school year was, so she was really involved in sports in middle school. she ended up wrestling in middle school. Like she was one of the first really like girl wrestlers at the middle school, and she loved it. So her and her friend, who is also half Black, would go to the library after school, wait for me to get there, because when I got off, I would pick them and I would take her friend home, and then we would go home. So I picked them up one day, and Elijah wasn't gonna say anything, but her friend let me, they knew enough. She let me drive a few blocks away, and she says, Natalie, I don't know what to do. I should have said something. And I was like, what are you talking about? And she says, I should have said something. He told us to go pick cotton. And I was like, what? And so I was moving at the moment, driving, and I remember hitting the brakes, and I was like, hold on, pull over. And I looked at my kid who's in the back seat, and I said, tell me what happened. So it was a high school kid who was at the library with one of his girlfriends after school, and they were sitting in there, decided to start trying to talk to these two 8th grade girls who were kind of like, yeah, there's this middle school or high school boy trying to talk to us, you know, it's kind of weird, like, and they're both kind of shy. So they didn't say anything, and they didn't want to talk to him. He was a high schooler. It pissed him off. So he decides he's going to just tell them to go pick cotton, because they're 2 Black girls, so you might as well just go pick cotton. I literally contemplated going back to the library and going and telling that boy off.
You should have.
I should have, but I didn't. I went, I sat there for a few minutes, and I had the conversation with them, and I said, so here is a defining moment. I have one of 2 choices. I can go back there and I can talk to that kid who's gonna go home and tell his parents that this crazy ass lady was defending her Black kid and blah, blah, blah. And then I'm gonna be hearing from some parent who's pissed and is probably super racist, and they don't give a shit. And like, I wasn't strong enough in myself at that point to put up with that. Today, I would walk in there, hand that boy my phone number, and say, have your dad give me a call. At that point, I wasn't ready to do that. So instead, I went home. I call it a Facebook rant. It was more like a Facebook plea. I posted on the Arlington Living, and it was long. It's still there. You can go find it. I then I scheduled a meeting with the then principal. I went to the school. And I said, look, here's what's going on in the hallways. I don't know why these things keep happening. My kid was accosted at the library by a high schooler. I don't know why this is okay and why this is happening, but something needs to take place. Nothing happened. I left the meeting that day and was told, we'll see if we can set something up for spring. So this was like, I don't know, probably January, maybe February. And it was like sorry, we don't really know what to do because we're uncomfortable in this situation and we don't know how to handle it. And I said, cool. I showed up to the next school board meeting, which I think was the next week. And I had typed up a speech. I had some questions. I read it to them, and Will Nelson happened to be there. He's great. He was the principal at Weston at the time. He came to me immediately after the meeting, like they took a break, and he came up to me, he handed me his card, and he said, I am so glad that a parent has stepped up and said something, because I've been fighting to try to get things brought to the surface here for a long time, but people don't believe me when I say that this is happening. I didn't hear back, so I had handed them a list of questions, and I read them, so they were on the record. I didn't hear back for a couple months. a reporter from the Marysville Times or whatever it's called now was there, and he'd handed me his card and he said, hey, I walked in like the last couple minutes. I'd be interested in hearing from you, you know, whatever. So when I didn't hear back from the school district, I reached out to him. Within hours, I had an email from the school district, of course, that was like, oh goodness, we didn't realize you gave us questions. We're looking into that. Would you like to join the ACE committee? And I was like, what is this? Okay, I guess, you know, I need to make changes. I'll be involved. So I joined the ACE committee, and I've been really involved with the district ever since. Mind you, they are actively working to make changes, and I see that, but it is painfully slow, right? In 5 years, we have adopted an equity and diversity policy. Like, we have a leader of diversity, Will Nelson. He's working on things with the city, but the elementary school, at least at Pioneer, I don't know what the other schools have, I think it's in 3rd grade, they've kind of adopted a new history type of platform that teaches it. It's a lot more comprehensive than what it had been. There really haven't been any more changes that I've noticed. I mean, I might be unaware of other things, but there's just been not a lot of active support for anti-racism in the way that it should be happening. It should be happening a lot faster than it was, or than it has been. I don't even know. I mean, I could go on and on with the list of things. So the NAACP had come into the high school at one point a couple years ago, and they were trying to establish a Black student union. They were pulling the kids out of classes once a month, one class, a different class period, one. So my daughter missed one class, different periods for a few months. And they don't have a Black student union. I don't know if they couldn't get an advisor. Instead, they have a diversity club. There's, they already have an LGBTQ club, right?
Just slap a club
We
on it.
couldn't get a Black student union. So she would come back from those meetings with the NAACP, which was amazing. Her first meeting, she came home and she goes, Mom, I didn't realize there were so many other Black kids in school. There's like 40 in the whole school, maybe 50. And she was like, I didn't realize that there were that many of us. There's kids that need the support. But she would come back from those meetings, and kids that she had considered her friends, that she'd gone to school with since 2nd grade, would come back and say, how come there isn't a white club?
Can I ask something real quick?
Yeah.
About the ACE committee?
Yeah.
And look, Will Nelson is a wonderful, wonderful person. He is amazing at the trainings he does. He is everything I'm not. He's nice. He's just so good. I was very active on the ACE committee in 2018.
Mm-hmm.
2019, they changed my shift to start at 4 in the morning, so I wasn't as active. I still got all the emails. I still read the emails. Did I miss the meetings where racial justice came up in the ACE committee?
No.
Or did they never come up?
They generally didn't come up. So
Thank you.
their version of having this come up was having us do like the little poetry activity of let's find a poem to write about yourself so that we all can be aware that we're all different. Well, we're adults in this room. We all know that we're all different. That's not, I don't know. I went down with the district to the WASA. There's an equity and diversity symposium thing that they put on at the convention center every year. I think that's where we went. I don't even remember, whatever.
I remember that, but they only took 2 people.
Right.
And it was in the middle of the week, and I was going to have to take a day off. And I figured that more, people who didn't have to take a day off would go.
Yeah. So I
didn't know you went. I knew the other one who went.
Yeah, I went. I was a presenter with the district on that one because I kind of helped spearhead the whole diversity and equity thing that we have going. And I don't know. There are so many problems in Arlington related to this, so much more than people want to recognize and to acknowledge. And it's not just here in Arlington, it's everywhere. It's everywhere. I mean, we've been going out to the protests and the sign wavings in Granite. We're on the rooftop protest in Marysville every week. Yeah, we get lots of support in horn honkings and great shows of support and all this stuff, but we also get tons of people driving by and flipping us the bird and all lives matter and white power and whatever the hell else it is that they're saying. And that shit's got to stop. It's not what we are here for. Like, we're here on Earth as an animal to procreate, to pass on our genes to the next generation of Homo sapiens, which we are all part of. I love to take it to the nerdy science end because I feel like it helps people understand that, like, we are all the same stupid species, and race in the social construct is not race as in the human race. Yeah, we have different cultures and we have what we call different races, but they're social constructs. And over the course of history, we have put certain people into different categories to build other people up and to keep other people down. And that kind of shit has got to stop. Like, my kids aren't any different. I have 2 black kids and 1 white kid, and my 2 black kids aren't any worse off or aren't any lower on the social ladder, or shouldn't be, than my white kid. Like, they're all sisters. They should be given the same worth in society, but they're not gonna be.
For people who don't believe what Natalie is saying is happening, I've been out with Change the Narrative Granite Falls since his 2nd week, so over a month. And I met Natalie at one of the protests. The last protest they had was on a Friday. The Everett Herald was there because a Back the Blue protest was scheduled at the very same time. And Back the Blue canceled their protest, but the Everett Herald still came. So they start at 5. I don't know, we were there 10 minutes early. And the Herald reporter introduced himself. I said, okay, you're going to see a show. And so we all line up at 5. And at 5:03, we really had the reporter really hadn't even gotten set up yet. At 5:03, the first car comes by screaming white power and giving Hitler salutes. And I turned to the reporter and said, welcome to the protest. Yeah. I am not a protester, as I have friends who are professional protesters. They're always protesting something. They can't get enough of it. That's not who I am. That being said, this has changed me, and I think everybody should go to one of these, especially the people who are kind of on the fence saying this really isn't happening. You're going to learn.
You're going to learn.
And you're not going to like what you see. And if you do like what you see, you shouldn't.
Sorry for interrupting you, Ryan. We learned about Will Nelson and his role as the diversity and inclusion for the school district through the parents group that we admin on Facebook. And it was after the death of George Floyd, and a parent had shared some information, and they were, is the school going to do anything? Is the community going to do anything? And they eventually, some community members did put together, a walk, and Ryan participated. But that thread in itself, like, if you don't think that racism is here in Arlington, one parent said, "We have diversity issues." That's all she said. She really got piled on by parents. Prove it. If you don't have proof it happened, it never happened. And they just pounded on her nonstop. They just wanted to shut up about it. That's all it is. It's shush, 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 stop, stop, stop. And I ended up getting this guy. I had to kick him out of the group. He's making threatening messages to me in my Facebook. And I'm like, how can you say this isn't about racism? I mean, this is nothing but that. He's towing the line as far as he can go without coming right out and saying a slur, saying all the things he possibly can. They know how to play it.
Oh, they definitely do.
When it's intentional antagonization and it's a pile-on about that just because of the topic, well, you've just shown your true colors. And that's plenty of information for me to know that there's a huge problem.
Right. So my oldest again, so Deja being 11, just is starting to, not to say she hasn't recognized any of it. In elementary school, the N-word was thrown around tons of times all over the place, and she would come home and have very similar reports that Enijah had when she was in elementary school. They won't leave my hair alone. They're, talking about my skin and how it's this or whatever, asking me weird questions. And I'm like, well, I'll take the weird questions to a certain extent because, like, you guys are still little and they might be curious. It might not really be from a bad point of view. It might be because they really don't know and they've never seen it before. So they're asking. When it feels mean, let me know, and we would still get some of that. But so, and I just got more life experience, so she's got more events as of recently. Erica went out and was sign waving with us a few weeks ago because ever since Enijah was little, we would go blackberry picking, and I Facebook ranted again, and it wasn't really a rant, it was a plea. She was out there picking blackberries literally a block from my house. She's essentially in my front yard with her best friend, who is blonde-haired and blue-eyed, standing out there at a blackberry bush, and a car decides that he needs to come by, stick his body out of the car, and scream the N-word at them. Why? Right? Why? So I put it on Facebook, and I get people responding on there saying, where's the proof?
Right.
What? What? How do you know? What? I'm sorry that my new 17-year-old wasn't like prepared enough for somebody to lean out the car and be like, where she already had her video on and would have just conveniently turned around to record it to prove to you that this happened. Like,
a body cam, Natalie.
I guess, like, we need to all walk around with them on all the time, right?
Jeez.
It's all over the place and it's disgusting, honestly. I don't know what to do to make sure that my kids and the other kids like them in town are safe here all the time, just like their white counterparts. I'm not going to name a store, and I'm not going to say that this was absolutely the case, but my 11-year-old was downtown with two of her white friends, and they're being middle school kids, and so maybe it was being middle school kids. But they were in a store. They had all split up, whatever, were walking around the store. She says she was trying to find her friends when one of the employees walks up to her and is like, "You're not causing any problems, are you?" And I'm like, I don't want to jump to the race card, but he couldn't have asked, like, say, the blonde boy or the redhead girl, who were both also in the store walking around being kids, like, and then he followed them out of the store and was standing outside as they went into another store. Like, I don't want my kids to, and I don't want any kids to have a complex about their skin color, because it shouldn't be a thing. But it's something that definitely pops up when they're in a group, and the one that gets questioned is the black kid.
Your mom thinks
That's weird.
Natalie, were you at the BLM rally, the big one in Arlington?
Yes.
One in, what happened there?
What do you mean what happened there?
Before we started the march,
The guys
kids were
driving up,
the kids were giving the talks, what happened on the street?
the guys driving up and down the street, revving their engines, the guy on the motorcycle revving his bike, the guy driving down with his Trump and his whatever flags out the windows, screaming F you, whoever, whatever he was yelling, and then the high school kids standing up and, you know, that's a great group of kids, by the way, standing up for them and saying, you know, screw you guys, go to hell. This isn't what we want. This is our town. We grew up here too.
That is an accurate description for everybody who wasn't there. That is 100% accurate.
Or up at the top of the hill by the library, the guy that was parked there in his truck that was screaming at people as I walk by with my kids, and he screams at me to raise my kids right. I was a little bit loopy because I literally had just gotten home from surgery that day, and I didn't even think. I turned to him and I screamed, "I am, thank you very much."
I was at a BLM rally in Cedar Woolley, and these two white guys came out of a bar right by where we were. And one's really nuts. The other one's just they're both wearing Trump hats. The other one's just being kind of, yeah, y'all know what I want to say. But he's talking about how much respect for the police he has. And tell by looking at the guy, and of course the guy's a multimillionaire. You know, you can tell by looking at the guy with all his tattoos and all the facial piercings, he's a regular Jeff Bezos. How much respect he has for the cops, and the cops know him. And I know the guy's a criminal. And the cops know him, and he kind of hugs the cops, and the cops are all buddy-buddy with him. And eventually the bartender comes out of this bar and comes and gets him because she knew what he was doing. And so I'm standing next to the chief of police, who was the cop that was very friendly with this guy. And I said, hey, how do you think that looks when you have an open racist hugging you and saying what a great guy you are? And boy, he did not like that question. He said, I have been supportive of this from the get-go. I said, that is not what I asked you.
Right.
I said, how do you think it looks when you have open racists being very friendly to you and you being friendly back to them? And the cop just walked away. I made my point. But for people to say it's not here and it's not a problem, all right, I will take you up on that challenge. You come out and stand up
on it too, Ryan. You know why? Because if you don't think that it's here in Arlington, I dare you to go to Lowe's and wear this hat like I do every time I go to Lowe's, and tell me that
I agree with that.
That somebody who thinks that that's a Trump hat wants to give you a good old boy nod, and then looks at it again and gives you a good old fuck you, buddy, because you're supposed to be with us.
Yeah. I know what you're getting.
Is there.
It's absolutely.
Natalie, will you make up face masks of that?
Yes.
My childhood friend in San Diego is wearing one of those, and he's a black man.
Yes.
I wanted to say something. First off, thank you, Natalie, for all you're doing, being a teacher, emphasizing diversity and inclusion. Growing up in Gold Bar in Salton, in eastern Snohomish County, 30 years ago, I met who became, outside of my wife, became my best friend. And it was funny. His name's Chris, and he has a white mother and a African-American father. And he was the first one in that area like that. And it was funny. We were just thinking the other day, a few of us were talking that are still been friends all these years, 30 years. And the first time I had heard about him, my friends were saying, hey, have you met Chris? wasn't a big deal, right? You know, hey, have you seen Chris yet? Have you met Chris? Whereas the vast majority of people were like, have you seen that black kid? And I never thought about it, right? You know, until now, years later. And it was actually funny. Chris and I, a month ago, we were talking on the phone. He lives down in Portland now, and we were talking about the protests and everything, and we realized that we had never had a race conversation with each other because he was Chris and I'm Craig, and that's really all that we cared about, right? You know, that wasn't even a factor for us. And what he was telling me was, he goes, I can't believe the hate that's spewing from people that he thought he was friends with growing up, that's coming out like on Facebook and Twitter and Instagram things. He was blown away. And I said, it was always there. I don't even know why you thought it wasn't, or that maybe it improved over time. And actually, there's been like a resurgence of it in the last few years that has really brought it. Things that were festering under the surface, it has really come to the forefront, even there, where he's like, I have to really reevaluate who I'm kind of associating with from back when we were growing up. And I said, they were always there. You didn't want to accept it. And you know, and there were those of us who accepted him for who he was, and that was fine with us, you know, but it definitely affected him. And he has had series of events that have happened to him over the course of his life too, that very race driven incidents. So it was just something this summer especially has really brought a lot of that to the forefront, and it's unfortunate. I don't know how you can improve that necessarily, except education. Keep showing kids that it's okay to like other kids. Like you brought up the example, was it in the Tri-Cities where the little one boy just wanted to say hi or wave, you know, it's like, yeah, you got to teach kids that that's totally okay, you know. And I did have a question though. So what does ACE stand for? What's the acronym?
Arlington
Committee for Education.
Okay.
It's a school board. Here, the ACE committee is a good thing. I don't deny that. My only problem with the ACE committee is that it's mostly staff members. And look, some of that is because people won't show up. I understand that part. I just think it would be a better thing if there were more parents on.
They really try to get there. So if you look at the list of the members, there are a lot of parents that have said that they will be members, but it's the showing up that's hard. And I mean, I'll admit it, like I have a hard time showing up. I think I went to one meeting last year because as a first year teacher, by the end of the day, coming home, trying to get ready for the next day and all that stuff, it's so hard to show up for those after school, late in the evening kinds of things, you know. And then we had a little one. I mean, she was only 1.5 years at that point too. So it's hard to get that ongoing committed involvement. The ACE committee kind of serves as this in-between for the community and the school board, where like if somebody has a question for the school district or a suggestion and they know an ACE committee member, instead of just bombarding the district office or the superintendent with random questions or suggestions, they can tell their friend, we can bring it up at the ACE committee meeting, and we can talk about it or present it there. Things get researched by the ACE committee. So like the whole, the schedule, the start times. So we're looking at delaying middle and high school start times because there's science that says that like starting at 9 o'clock is better than 8 o'clock because, you know, well, buses have to start running at like 6. So we researched all of that nationally, statewide, international, you know, what are all the different models? And then we pared that down, researched some more, pared that down more, researched it until we came together and had something that we could present to the school board and say, here's our recommendation as a committee. You know, we had these 20-something people that researched this, talked about it, spent a lot of time on it, and here's what we're recommending. So that's one of the functions of the ACE committee. A lot of it, honestly, is sitting there listening to budget and different proposals and just getting people to be aware of what's going on in the district, I guess. I don't know. Sometimes I'm like, why am I here for this?
The information they put out, I can never remember the guy's name. I know his face. He's the guy who is the coordinator for the school lunch program. The information that they put out in the meetings is so good for the most part. The problem is the public never gets to see it, and they won't record them and put the info out. So while I love what it tries to do, I love that it's there. Man, get your message out, guys. And for somebody like me who last year I didn't make anything because I was getting up at 3 in the morning to go to work. And when you get up at 3, you need to go to bed before literally the ACE meeting even starts. And I suggested this in the RAS meetings. I said, hey, there's no reason for us all to have to show up for these anymore. Zoom them.
Yes.
If you want participation, make it so more people can show up. And there's nothing easier than a Zoom meeting. You don't have to go anywhere.
Yep.
Whereas if I'm working at 3, if I'm getting up at 3 and the meeting starts at 6, I could be there for at least part of it on Zoom. So
Post on the website ACE committee minutes and agendas, but it's inconsistent. It's not reliable. And it seems to be 2 different depositories for how they list that stuff. Sometimes you could get it in that portal to the board documents, but they used to have one where it was listed off the website administration. You could find things like that. So I don't know why it's an inconsistent thing of the information that they put out isn't released altogether, or maybe they just use different formats to send it out and we just don't know where it is. I don't know.
I have no idea.
all right, we're in the weeds for a campaign. Natalie, is there anything else you would like to say before we stop recording?
Trying to think if there's anything that I forgot. Oh, just this. So way back to the library incident. After I Facebooked that event, I heard from quite a few individuals that I got a lot of thank yous for speaking up because they were afraid to speak up. And specifically, they had said, basically, we'd been waiting for somebody that looks like you to bring this to their attention because you look like them. So they'll listen to you. There were a lot of Black and brown families that had expressed that they had brought information or events or things to the attention of school leaders, probably past administration, honestly, city heads, whatever. And it was either brushed off or ignored, or it never went anywhere. And so I had more than a handful of people that said something of that. Thank you for being the face of this because you look like them and they just might listen to you. We needed a white person or a white looking person to bring this to the attention. And I was like, I didn't know, I didn't even know what to do with that. I've always been in this weird limbo in my own identity because as a kid, I wasn't white enough, but I wasn't Mexican enough. I didn't speak Spanish, but I had this darker skin and darker hair. And, my grandma was this little lady that spoke with a heavy accent and I didn't fit in with anybody. So then to have this group of adults come to me and be like, well, you look like them, so you get to pass for it. And I'm like, this is a really weird thing. But it worked, I guess, a little bit, right? There's something happening. I don't know. A lot of my things end with a big, huge question mark because I don't know. Like, I mean, I inserted my foot big. I work with the district and know a lot of the administration on a first name basis. I finished my teaching degree. Actually, I started that. Ironically, I had just started it going into getting my teaching stuff as Elijah was starting to have issues in 8th grade. I'd made the decision that I was going to be a teacher right before all of this started to happen. And I was like, well, here we go. Foot first, moving on. And now I'm in the district teaching, and it's something that this topic is something that my students know I don't mess around with. I have stopped classes as a first-year teacher to flat out say, you will not say those words, whatever those words are. Making fun of somebody's skin, hair, sexuality, whatever it is, I don't care. You will not do that in my classroom. It will not fly. And, you know, because you don't know who it is that you're talking to, or what do you really even know about yourself? So yeah, I don't know. It's that was another eye opener for me. You look like them, so maybe they'll listen to you.
I have one sort of solution to this. My wife and I started the Parents of Arlington, Washington School District Facebook site in 2018 after the Andrew Medley incident.
Mm-hmm.
And we specifically started it to publicly document the Andrew Medley incident, but other incidents. And we were new to the district. I mean, email and put it out on Facebook or whatever, put it in our group. We've done everything we could to possibly keep that group as non-political as possible. I didn't even announce my candidacy in that group, and I still haven't, because it's not supposed to be a place to argue politics, and it's not going to be, and we will shut that stuff down immediately. The district cannot say, if you send them an email or if you put it out on your Facebook page and tag people in it, it's all timestamped. I can go back to the first post in that group, and I think anybody can if you just want to let it load. And learning to navigate the Arlington School District as a newcomer is not an easy thing, especially for, you know, we're white people. It would be easier for us than people of color, but learning, just learning the ins and outs of the school district is not an easy thing. But if there are problems, put it up in our group, send emails. They're all dated. They're all forever. The district cannot say, we didn't get this. And if you want to guarantee that they didn't say that we didn't get it, put a return receipt on it. At least that way, there is no plausible deniability.
Oh, so we also, you know, during security issues, when we were not allowed to discuss it anywhere in a virtual environment throughout Facebook, that's why we created our group, so that we could discuss these hard topics that for some reason are discouraged everywhere else. Hard topics don't have to be offensive or attacks on each other. You know, when parents are solving problems together and working with the school, that's a good thing. So when people are approaching the board and the superintendent, if they don't want to go alone and they send us a message that they want to go to the board meeting, I'll go with them.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I mean, I'll get off work early and I'll stand there with them. So that's important when these things come up, to share them. And we're not going to let other parents or staff members
control the narrative.
Talking about difficult things.
We did have that problem as well. That was the primary reason we started the group, was because in other Arlington groups, you talk about the school district and ask questions in any way that could possibly been seen as remotely negative. The post disappeared.
Or you mean like you can't call somebody, not even call them, you can't say that somebody's ignorant?
I wouldn't even go that far. It was, look, the school district is the biggest employer in town.
Bring that up again.
Yeah.
And a lot of people running the other groups are either directly employed by the district or have a spouse who is, and they did not want any criticism at all.
So here's my thing. The only way I feel like we're going to make any kind of change is if we all stand together, honestly. The more that we stand together and the more that we show that this is not acceptable, those people will get flushed out.
They do.
They will. And the more, I'm serious, we can't do the, oh yeah, I support it from a distance kind of thing no more. Okay? Like, I'm out, I do this every Saturday with friends and family and get cussed at, pointed the finger at, whatever. I'm not saying that what we're doing is the end all be all, but we're trying to make some changes. We're involved in Marysville and working on some things down there to try and help the community.
And
we need more people. We need more support.
Yeah, there needs to be more people that are willing to show up. I take all 3 of my kids every Saturday to Marysville.
We're getting death threats. It's bad.
There are scary people. There are scary people in Arlington. There are super scary people in Arlington. I don't want my kid or some other Black or brown kid to be walking downtown and run across some member of Atomwaffen that happens to be in town because he's visiting his parents, or, you know, we've got literal white supremacist groups that are based in and around Snohomish County.
There was a gentleman who was beaten at a bar, a DJ in Lake Stevens. I work with that gentleman. I
don't know the DJ who was beaten in Linwood. He is the cousin of my coworker.
He is he's a good coworker, friend of mine. I know him at work. We're cordial. He comes to the protests every once in a while. He has severe nerve damage and body damage, can't walk right. Still fighting legal battles over that. Group of white supremacists that beat him up while he was at a bar, DJing for the bar.
Was this the guy in Linwood?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, I know his cousin. I work with his cousin.
So Tyler, that's his name. Good friend of mine.
We have to be willing to, as community members, when we see things like happen to your children in town, people that we don't know, when we're witness to that, we have to be willing to step up and say, she's not doing anything. I'm with her. And you're alone. You know, we have to be willing to take the risk to speak up all the time.
You got to be willing to sit in your uncomfortable lunchroom at work, like I do now, alone, segregated from my coworkers because they all know what I do on Saturdays.
Yeah.
And I wear a Black Lives Matter mask at work, and I don't give a fuck who sees it. My kids are important to me, and I'm willing to fight for them to be equal like everybody else. And it's come to light. I don't have many friends at work since I've been doing this. I've been doing this for 16 weeks now. And I've now sit alone at lunch. So
well, I sit with you.
We got to be willing to have those uncomfortable. It might be uncomfortable for now until everybody realizes that, hey, maybe if we all join up with this guy, those other guys who are being assholes might stop being assholes.
The one ray of hope I do have in all of this is that for every idiot, you know, giving us the finger, flying their Trump flag, or flying the white power symbols, and granted, we are getting, it's at least 10 to 1 of people honking in support. It's probably closer to 20 to 1. That does give me some hope. And like Craig said, I don't believe that this is new. This is just, it's just more comfortable for people than it was 5 years ago.
And that 20 to 1 people are the ones I implore to come out instead of.
I agree with you. We haven't been to Marysville yet.
Marysville gets fun. I'm telling you, Marysville. So there's the school district out there. There's Marysville teachers, a lot of them that started showing up because of one of he is their diversity something, whatever he is for their district at the high school. And he reached out to the teachers and said, hey, this is something we need to be supporting because it directly affects our students. And this is positive. So they come out and it is a show, man. There are flags all over the place. We're right on the corner by 7-Eleven and Buzz Inn. And they, at the different green lights, there'll be people walking across the street with the flags, like going around all 4 corners and sitting on the electrical boxes, waving the flags. And it gets pretty fun.
All right. I'll go next weekend.
It also gets kind of scary when you see somebody that you are like, we've never seen that person before. And, because we're trying to make sure that this event is safe. And so you have to kind of have a little bit of a biased look at how you're judging some people that are walking up. And we're looking and we're going, who is that? What do they have in that backpack? Why are they coming over here? And then, you see them walk over to somebody and hug somebody that they know, and you're like, all right, they're cool. But it's
you do have to have your radar up. That is true.
You do. And I mean, being in Granite, we've been doing Marysville for 16 weeks now. And there have been times where things get escalated. You get some random person coming over and screaming and whatever, and then they disappear. Like they walk away, they go home, they had to scream at someone. Cool. When I showed up to Granite Falls, I have never, ever, ever experienced, and I told Michael this one, I said, there was a level of hate I have never experienced before in my life. And I grew up in Southern California in gangland. Like it was so foreign and so scary, which tells me it's something that we need to be doing because we shouldn't be in the town over, literally. I have students that live in Granite Falls. We shouldn't be at that place, or this shouldn't be a thing. So we need to be in that place. We need to be in that town supporting our students and our neighbors, because what if my child is driving, she drives now, driving down Highway 9 and gets a flat tire on that end of town and is stopped on the side of the highway? Which white supremacist is going to drag her up the loop and hang her from a tree as they have so threatened other people?
Yeah, I met a real Nazi in Granite Falls in my first or second week there.
Yeah.
I met some interesting folks, I tell you what.
There are people that, and this guy wanted to talk to Michael. And for those of you who don't know who Michael Adams is an amazing guy, man. He is so smart and so gentle, and his historical knowledge is unparalleled. Old white guy, he comes up saying, well, your sign says talk to me. I'm here to talk to you. And so Michael and I start talking to him, and this guy has and this is I don't know how he fixed this problem, but one of the first things Michael said to him was, well, I want to change the history lessons in schools to reflect actual history. And this guy just cannot handle that. He said, well, you're disparaging the founding fathers. And about this time, I'm getting a little animated with the guy. And Jessica comes over and pulls me away, and she says, Ryan, you're getting too animated with the guy. Just let him and Michael talk. Fine. So they're standing about 15 feet away from me, and I hear Michael say, look, I'm not going to change your mind on anything. So the guy's walking back to his truck. Jessica's at the other end of the line. And I consider myself kind of an angry white guy whisperer. I can get in their head. And I know what they're going to say. And I know if I talk to this guy long enough, the Nazi part's going to come out. So one of the things that so offended the guy was that, you know, hey, we're not teaching the history of George Washington having the teeth of his slaves pulled out and put in his own mouth. And I said, hey, man, why is that so offensive to you? And he said, because it disparages the founding fathers. And I said, okay, fine. I think what really disparages the founding fathers is that we're not teaching the correct history. And I said, it's horrible. You know, I didn't go to school here. I grew up in Illinois. I came out here when I was in the Navy, and I stayed when I got out. And I said, I know more about the Holocaust and World War II than I do about how Americans wiped out millions of Native Americans. And he said, the Holocaust didn't happen. I said, really? So when my grandpa did the march across Europe in World War II and was one of the liberators in Bergen-Belsen, all of that stuff was for decoration? And he said, no, Hitler wanted to, he didn't mean to kill all those people. He wanted to send them to Madagascar. You laughed. That was, so he was technically right. I came home and looked that up.
He was. That was like the original idea, and the whole Caucasian thing. Yes, that was the original idea.
Hitler wanted to send them to Madagascar so they would all starve and die there. He just didn't want to put in all the work of the concentration camp. So,
he still wanted to kill us.
Yes, he still wanted to kill them all. And he said, well, nowhere near as many died in the Holocaust. I said, what a bunch of crap. And he said, why are you guys not flying the American flag? I said, why aren't you flying your fucking Nazi flag? And at that point, he got mad and left. How do I say this? He thought he was the smartest guy in the room. And with the rooms he probably normally sits in, he probably was the smartest guy in the room. But I don't understand, like I read a ton of history, and I only read nonfiction. And I read a lot of what are called forgotten history events. I read a lot of labor history, a lot of racial history. I just finished, I've Got a Home in Glory Land today, which was about two slaves who were married. And they didn't live together because most married slaves owners didn't live together. One of the owners dies, and they lived in Lexington, Kentucky. And they're afraid that they're going to be split up. They're going to be sold down the river. Being sold down the river was invented in Lexington. That term was invented in Lexington because the slave trade happened there, and you got sold down the river to go down to Louisiana or somewhere to go to work in the field.
Yep.
And they got out. They got to Detroit. The slave catchers came and got them. The black community in Detroit, which was very small at the time, busted them out of prison. They went to Canada. The slave catchers tried to get them out of Canada. They were the first legal case that said, you know, you can stay in Canada and the slave catchers are not allowed here. None of that history was taught to me in school. None of that history is taught to kids in Detroit today.
It's not.
And these are all fascinating things. Now, why this is so threatening to some people to be taught, that is beyond me. But they need to make up the idea of America in their head, and they can't, if anything challenges that, they cannot function.
I have a hard time with it too, because you can ask my wife, man, I do not like when she says stuff like, sometimes this country pisses me off, because I'm a veteran. I fought for this country. Like, this is what I love this country. I do.
He gets mad at me because I'm like, I fucking hate America right now. And he's like, don't say that. And I'm like, well, I do, all right? Like, I'm not saying that I don't want to be American. I just hate America right now.
Like, that's valid. And I can see how people would have a hard time with seeing the people that they, I guess, revere as people who were heroes or liberators of whatever, that they're these gods that they see these old historians as, but that's not what they are. Why don't we just tell what they did for real so we can get on with it?
I agree with that.
Because
I agree with that 100%.
Growing up in California, you have like this, I don't know, it's like a utopian society to some level, because it's so diverse. Like, I didn't even feel like racism was like a thing. Like, I had to move out of California before I even was like recognizing that this is a thing. And maybe part of that was because I was a kid too, but I don't know. I mean, everybody that I knew was mixed, or there were so many different races that it was just like this thing. So then when I met my first husband, who was from Louisiana, he grew up in Baton Rouge, and then in this small ass little town, his graduating class was like 12 people. I mean, like, he didn't even realize I pointed out the history of his own family land to him when I was looking at things. I'm like, wait a minute, your grandma lives on the sharecropping land that was given to your family. He's like, what are you talking about? And I said, well, look at it. Betty lives here. Her cousin lives across the road. It was literally a street with the whole family on it in the middle of the woods. And I'm like, that was their sharecropping land. And he was like, oh shit, we didn't even, what? I'm like, how long has that land been in the family? I don't know. So we did a family tree on them, and I took it back, and I took it back, and I took it back. My girls can trace their family back to the 1600s, to the first Black man in their family that was free. Their family has been in this country and free since before most white people were in this country, but they're Black.
How did they stay free in Louisiana?
Right. They are more American than most people in this country that claim to be American or American. My great-grandpa was 100% Native American. Always in this country, right? My grandma is Mexican, so Native American, North American, always in North America. Right? The last people to come to this country in my family tree, in their family tree, were less than 150 years ago. I feel that there's this like point in value of knowing really where you came from and who you are or real that people are missing. Like, are you really American? Because let me tell you, my girls, their family's been here for like 400 years. Just saying. The white family, so the white man that sired his Black son that was then free, and every one of his descendants after him was free, their family, there's a book written about them, came from England to South Carolina and founded the parish that their dad grew up in Louisiana. Weird. Like,
Can I turn that land issue on its head real quick?
Yeah.
My family has been, I'm from Illinois. Most of my family is still there. Where my family is from in Southern Illinois, they've been there so long that part of that land was literally land granted to them in the 1840s by the Polk administration. And we still have pieces of it.
Yeah.
That is, land grants did not apply to anybody but white people for the most part.
Right.
Until the program was almost over. That is one hell of an advantage.
Right. What is she?
And you can't make that, even though it's not highly valuable land, it's still an asset and we also forget to teach in history class that America was expanded by socialism when the government gave away the land to any white person that wanted it at 160 acres a pop. So, and look, especially when you get in places like Granite Falls and Arlington, the royalties of both of those towns made their money off of selling their original land grants. Some very recent, I mean, some within the past 10 years.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's systemic. I mean, the way land was originally owned was systemic racism. Period. That is not.
Oh,
that
absolutely.
Is not,
I mean, World War
history class.
World War II. You know, the VA loans and the GI Bill is what they called it back then.
Yep.
Sorry, you're black. You get to go back and deal with all the racism, and you don't get a GI Bill. But you're white. Here's your house.
Yep. Yeah, and I don't know when the VA loan came through, but I do know you're correct in the GI Bill part.
Yeah.
At this point, does anybody have any problem ending the recording? All right, honey. Let's stop recording. And Natalie, thank you.
Yeah.
This is great. This will go up on my Facebook site tomorrow.
I was arguing with your child, so you want me to stop recording?
Yeah.
Okay.